We are celebrating the release of Alex Duke's new book, From Eden to Egypt, a guided tour of Genesis. Thank you guys for being here. We're excited to talk about the book together. We're excited always to have conversations together, particularly about the Bible. And my name is Jim Hamilton, and with me are my two friends.
Alex.
Sam Amati.
Is this on? Alex Duke.
There you
Alex
go.
Duke. Sorry, I'm not normally in that role.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Mine's on, yeah.
So you may be familiar with the Bible Talk podcast, which the three of us are thrilled to do together. And in the course of our conversations, we have talked now, starting from Genesis 1. Yesterday, we recorded 2 Kings chapter 20. So we're almost to the end of 2 Kings. And one of the fruits of this has been this book on Genesis that Alex has come up with the promise of more to come, right?
Lord willing, yes. I'm already quite late on the second manuscript. But yes, Lord willing, I've started it.
So, is it just Exodus?
Well, this book was supposed to be Genesis through Deuteronomy, and then I wrote 65,000 words on Genesis. And so this next book is supposed to be Exodus through Deuteronomy, but we'll see how many words I write about Exodus.
Just do one on Exodus. And then do Leviticus through Deuteronomy. Yeah.
So, Alex, you're a graduate of Southern Seminary.
Yep.
And how about if you tell us all the different hats you wear, all the different ministry ventures you're involved in?
Yeah, so the main thing I have the privilege of doing is serving as one of the pastors of Third Avenue Baptist Church here in town. So Old Louisville, right next to the university. So I work for Third Avenue. I also work for 9 Marks, which I don't have a copy of the book. It's all right, I have it memorized. I work for 9 Marks. I've worked for 9 Marks for about 12 years as basically the senior editor for every book and website, etc. And then in very, very part-time capacity, I help a few other ministries. So one would be Reaching and Teaching, represented by Sam's nice pullover. And then there's a new ministry called ACME, the Association of Churches for Missions and Evangelism, that I just kind of help them think about what they're doing, and when a church is interested in joining ACME, I probably get on the phone with them. So, but those are like almost volunteer.
You
kind of run evangelicalism.
Yeah, me and Al Moeller.
Yeah. You're the Illuminati.
Yeah.
You're not also running the Pillar Network.
No. Though our church is a member of the Pillar Network, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, and tell us about the different podcast ventures you're involved in.
Well, Bible Talk is the one I've hosted for 5 years. Recently, I also released a more narrative style podcast called A Storm in the Desert, which tells the story of what the Lord has been doing through faithful churches in the Middle East and that general area of the world over the past 25 years. So that's 5 episodes, about 2 hours all told from beginning to end, called A Storm in the Desert. That's not like an interview conversation. It's kind of me telling a story with clips of conversations that I had with people. And I hope to do more of those in the future if I've,
Respond to this if you would. Is this like a positive version of what the CT guy did with the rise and fall of Mars Hill? The positive side of that negative coin?
Positive, yeah. So if Mike Cosper was telling I trust largely true story about the implosion of a church, what I tried to do is tell a positive, equally true story about what the Lord can do through faithful ministry. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopes, desires, dreams, things that you hope the Lord will do with this book.
I would love for folks who would never read a commentary, by which I mean I don't know where we are right now in the bookstore, but there's commentaries all around us. Probably commentaries on your shelves that you bought with good intentions, but maybe never read. I would love for those kinds of folks, what I'm coining, what I refer to as normal people, normal Christians.
I think you use the colloquial expression normies with us.
Yeah. So normal Christians, I hope that those folks would read this book and profit in much of the same way that people would read a commentary and profit. So I want people to understand the book of Genesis on its own terms. By which I mean I want people to understand the book of Genesis not only as like the first step to Jesus, though it is that, importantly so, but that there's also lots of stuff going on internally, you know, that's worthy of our investigation. It all makes sense. We can understand it all. It's all building to a really beautiful climax and culmination. So I tried to write a book that was like written for regular folks, that doesn't skip over the confusing parts. It doesn't skip right through to application or to getting to Jesus. That's probably why it was 67,000 words. So yeah, I would love for folks who love Jesus but don't really understand the Bible very well to pick it up and read it and profit.
And one of the things that struck me as I read the book was how much fun it was to read. So I you didn't say this, but I think I would say about the book, Alex has written a book that he doesn't want people to stop reading because they get bored, because it gets bogged down. So
They've already bought it, so if you stop reading, it's okay. But no, I'm kidding.
So can you talk to us about doing sort of narrative nonfiction in a way that keeps people turning the pages, and what went into your thinking about how to accomplish that?
Yeah, I just tried to not make it boring and technical. Technical is not useless. A sermon, many commentaries are technical and they get bogged down in important details. So I tried to focus on the main argument of the book of Genesis and write about it in a way that was, interesting enough for me to write the next paragraph. And so I think that the world is endlessly fascinating. Words are endlessly fascinating. And I think, if I could venture to say, lots of authors, especially in Christian books, are a little bit afraid to have fun. Maybe it's because they're not a fun person in normal life, which is fine. There are lots of people like that. Maybe because they think the subject matter is so serious and transcendent that being fun would somehow like undermine that, which that can happen. I think that's a risk that this book takes, and I hope it doesn't. I hope I never make that mistake. I certainly didn't mean to intentionally. But I just tried to write in a way that, like, I grew up in the megachurch world, and so I feel like I've got pretty good instincts for what, like, your average American evangelical thinks and believes and loves and feels. And so I tried to write a book not to them only, but, like, in a way that they would understand it all and not even maybe realize that, wow, I'm getting really good teaching. That I maybe don't normally get in my Sunday morning sermons.
There's this great scene in The West Wing where somebody asks Sam Seaborn who his favorite writer is, and he says, Toby, referring to his boss. I kind of feel like that's my experience working with you at 9 Marks. You're one of my favorite writers. You're one of my favorite writers not just because you're interesting, but you're really funny. And so I just want to read a paragraph from the book. This book is amazing, not just because of its content, but just like as an artifact, like the fact that it exists and it is what it is. And I just want to give an example of why that's the case. You said, are you familiar with the word aptronym? It's just a fancy way of saying an apt name, of noticing that someone's name just so happens to describe them. Obvious examples show up all the time in fiction. For example, there's The Pilgrim's Progress, in which characters have names like Obstinate and Mr. Greatheart and Child of Divorce, so that's where the self-deprecating sense of humor comes from. Less obvious examples include Daddy Warbucks from Annie, who, if you can believe it, made his bucks off the war. The phenomenon sometimes shows up in real life, too. William Wordsworth wrote Worthy Words. Chris Moneymaker shocked the world by making money, winning the 2003 main event of the World Series Poker as an amateur. Usain Bolt is as fast as lightning. You get the point. Just a couple more sentences. In Genesis 11, we get the story of one of the favorite aptronyms, my favorite aptronyms, Nimrod. You're probably like, Alex, you're a Nimrod. That name doesn't even show up in this chapter. You're right. But the Tower of Babel is proof that Nimrod is, well, a Nimrod. So there's a lot of people in this room.
My dad, who's, a Christian, and I love him to death, he's reading this book, and he asked me about the child of divorce comment, which was a little awkward conversation.
Okay. But there's a lot of students in this room practicing the craft of writing. I mean, how do you go about writing a paragraph like that? It's so entertaining. It's so fun to read. And it gets your point across. I mean, just what is that in you? How did you develop that craft?
I clearly watch a lot of movies. Yeah, which
I love at the end
and I remember them.
when you refer to the multiple endings of the Return of the King as fake out fade outs.
Yeah,
it's so good.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, part of writing is a art, not a craft. I think any human being can probably be a tolerable and clear writer. I do think God has gifted us in different ways. So, like, I don't know what you guys do for work. Maybe some of you are engineers. My friend Brett over there works in construction. I don't think I could literally ever do that. I don't think God gave me the ability to do that. I think God gave me some measure of gift that raised my floor of communication like this, and I've tried to hone it by reading quite widely and by having a little bit of fearlessness and a little bit of stupidity and kind of not afraid to embarrass myself, except for when I'm sitting next to a guy who's reading a paragraph to me. It's quite embarrassing. I don't know. That's like asking, like, why, where'd your hair go? You're like, I have no. The Lord took it away. Like, what? How can I write like this? I don't know. The Lord gave me something, and I tried to do something with it.
Alex, as you worked on Genesis to write this book, did you have like a favorite account in Genesis or something that stood out to you? Maybe a most prominent theme or teaching of the book that was most meaningful to you?
Yeah, such a great question. I mean, probably my favorite theme is just the way the Lord's purposes prevail. I mean, there is so much messed up stuff in Genesis. Some of it is gross and tawdry. Some of it is, just like, Rachel and Leah sort of having babies to spite each other. It's just horrible, And there's Abraham lying about his wife and twice. Isaac does the same thing. Like I said, there's the stuff with Lot and his daughter. There's just so much awfulness. Human sin from the good guys, sin from the bad guys, and yet the Lord's purposes prevail. But the ironic thing is, at the end of Genesis, it's not like they're in a good spot. They're not. They're they're not in their own land. They're in Egypt. Yes, they've got their own little like subdivision in it. Goshen. Now we know, because what's going to happen next. They're about to be enslaved, and so the whole book of Genesis, and really the whole Old Testament, is just the Lord patiently keeping his promises despite the sins of his people and their wickedness. Sam, I think I quote you actually in the book about how the Lord's promises prevail, despite men's wickedness and weakness. So that theme is just so resonant in the book of Genesis. It's just, it's the story of Joseph, but it really is the story of the whole book.
So, Sam, do you remember when we were talking through Genesis what I think we agreed, I think I convinced you, is the center of the chiastic structure of the whole book?
Genesis 24.
Genesis 24. So could you talk to us a little bit about why Genesis 24 is the center and what's going on in that chapter?
Yeah, well, this will come as a shock to nobody who's listened to Bible Talk. It's a preview of the Exodus where you have Abraham sending his servant ahead of him, and this servant is going to be directed by an angel, Abraham says. And, we see the same thing in the book of Exodus. The Lord is sending his servant who's being directed by an angel. And essentially what the servant is supposed to do is go procure a bride for his son. And that's what's happening in the Exodus. Moses is securing Israel as a bride for Yahweh. And, of course, all of these themes, these ideas are resonant with what we're going to find in the New Testament. This is the point of Scripture. The Lord is procuring a bride for his son.
And the bride in that episode, in that particular narrative,
is a new Abraham who has the faith of Abraham, who leaves father and mother,
right.
Acts like Abraham does in Genesis chapter 18.
But she's from the family of Abraham as
That's
well,
right? Yep.
Right? And with Isaac, she's going to perpetuate the line of descent of the promised seed of the woman,
Yep.
right? So I've said all this because, Sam read you a whole paragraph. I just wanted to read you this subtitle within Alex's book. So Alex, when he gets to Genesis 24, the subtitle of this section is Genesis 24, My Big Fat Non-Canaanite Wedding.
Which is exactly what happens.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just in normal language. Well, Sam, I do say all that, but it is in a footnote.
Oh, great.
And
Thanks for footnoting me.
Yeah. Well, what's the question? I agree with everything. I just don't.
Right, so,
I don't put it in that language. I just say like.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've obviously got a cultural reference there to the movie, My
Yeah.
Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yeah.
But clearly, the servant of Abraham, he's not to take a bride from among the Canaanites. You must not take a wife for my son Isaac from among the Canaanites. And so, it's just a clever way to capture the message of what's going on there.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I do, I quote you at length on the footnote.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks.
The smart stuff's in the footnotes.
Is there, looking back on the book, sometimes an author will complete his work and he'll look back and he'll think, I really wish I had more time for, or, if this book had been 80,000 words, I would have included, or something along those lines. Anything like that come to mind for you?
I mean, I would have included some of that kind of stuff more. I really tried to discipline myself to stay with like I don't know how to communicate this, like the first order of meaning of the text, like the most pressing meaning and argument of Genesis. I tried to keep my commentary primarily restricted to that. And so if the book had been a little bit longer, I could have certainly gone to the New Testament more to talk about the way the New Testament fulfills some of these expectations, certain prophetic things. I could have spent more time on, even stuff like the prophecies that Jacob gives to his sons. But some of that stuff I just kind of had to breeze by because, I couldn't say everything. Yeah.
What was your writing process like?
Slow and inefficient.
I mean, what is that? I mean,
And awful.
early in the morning, late at night, all through the day.
Mostly
crannies.
would be late afternoon.
Okay.
I would get a cup of coffee and try to write for a couple hours, or I would send for spring break. So remember last year spring break, for those of you who lived in Louisville, there was a tornado. You guys remember that? So I had sent my whole family to Florida for a week, and I was like, I'm going to stay home and write this book. I'm going to finish this book. I didn't quite finish it, but the tornado
That
went.
sounds so unpleasant.
It was
You
amazing.
sent your family to Florida.
Yeah, it was amazing. I got like 25,000 words done, but the tornado went right. Well, the tornado went right, literally in my front yard, like in out in Prospect, and so I remember thinking to myself, like as it was, ripping through. Shane, you live near me, you know how close it was. I was like, this is how I'm going to die. Like I'm going to die, holding my laptop alone because I had to finish this stupid book, but I survived. And so I that week was very efficient because I was able to. I canceled all pre-existing engagements.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've
You're
talked.
working on a book though.
It's true.
We've talked about these epitaphs on chapters and sections in another conversation that we had about this book. But I want to read a couple of these from the section that opens Genesis 37 through 50, because I think the different thinkers that are referenced are both remarkable and appropriate. Okay, so the first quotation is from John Newton, Amazing Grace. Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. His grace has brought me safe thus far. His grace will lead me home. The next quotation is from Forrest Gump, who says, I think I'll go home now. And then on the facing page, which is the beginning of chapter 13 on Genesis 37 through 41, the first quotation is from, now Genesis 37 through 41, this is where Joseph is going to have his dreams. So there's a quotation from Sigmund Freud, The Interpretation of Dreams, who he writes, the interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. And that's complemented by a quotation from Soren Kierkegaard, life can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forward. Could you talk to us a little bit about what all you're trying to suggest by quoting these various...
I mean, I'm kind of making fun of Freud, to be honest. Anytime you pull a quote from a book, it makes you feel smarter than you are. Because, let's be real, some of those are the result. I Googled, what did Freud say about dreams? I never read that book. Have seen Forrest Gump, and I've sang Amazing Grace. I'll start with, what is that saying about Amazing Grace? That's very straightforward. It's a beautiful promise. That's why that hymn has endured for 150 years.
And by the time you get to that point in Genesis, there have been many dangers, toils, and snares.
And it's only gonna, ratchet up or at least stay the same. And then with the Forrest Gump thing, I was trying to think of a way to communicate, or of a reference point that communicated the desire we all have to just when does Forrest Gump say that? When does he say, "I think I'll go home"?
When
now?
he's finished running, is that
yeah,
right?
when he's done running.
You know, another quotation earlier, much earlier in the book, is I've never seen the television show Lost, but you quote, is it Jack who says we have to go back?
Yeah, which is a bit of a spoiler, but yeah, it does happen. It's 20 years. Yeah, and so I'm just trying to think like, okay, if Jim and Sam and myself are right, and to say that Joseph, when these Old Testament saints are buried in the ground, they want to be buried. So Jacob dies. Where does he get buried? Where do they do?
They take him back to.
They take him back home,
the land,
right?
yeah.
And they take him back home, and they bury him in this cave that Genesis 23 spends the whole chapter talking about. And why does he do that? Well, he wants to, when he gets resurrected, he wants to be home. And so I was just trying to think of a very easy reference point for like that desire, that native desire in every human being to go back home. Which, of course, it's not exact. Forrest Gump is not thinking about any of this. But what I find so, I don't know, worthwhile about so many movies and TV shows and books is generally speaking, there's shreds of humane, even biblical truth in all of it, and it's worth mining and reflecting on. And no, it doesn't shed light on Scripture, but I just found it illuminating. Yeah.
You were functionally a youth pastor. I don't know if you called yourself that.
Yeah, I was.
That's what
happily
you were
so.
called.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this the type of book you could give to a 14-year-old, 15-year-old?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you write it with that type of person in view? Or?
No.
Okay.
I wrote it. I think anyone who wants to do a little bit, because you really do need to read Genesis along with the book, or you might could get away with it on Genesis 1 to 12 because you kind of know those stories pretty well. But once you get into the weeds of like all these things happening, and Melchizedek shows up, and all these little battery of characters show up, you really do need to read the chapters alongside the book to kind of, because I'm not quoting them at length, really at all. I'm the metaphor of the subtitle is true. I really am giving a guided tour. So hopefully, if you don't have your Bible open next to you, you've at least done the work of reading it before you read the chapters. So I think, but I do think a high schooler could read it and profit in the same. I mean, hopefully like an older person,
A guided tour.
like Jim.
A guided tour, and one of my favorite lines from one of the endorsements of Harrison Scott Key, like all the best tour guides, this author is a little demented.
Yes. I guess so.
So do you have plans on using this in the youth ministry at Third, or how do you hope to see this used as people just maybe disciple other believers, those kinds of things?
Well, I'm a retired youth pastor now, sadly.
You're no longer the youth pastor
No.
at Third?
No.
Really?
No. And so the
Did you get
progression.
fired?
Yeah, I don't think so. I just got another job. Started with Conversations and Bible Talk. I actually preached through the whole book of Genesis over a year to the youth group, and so the youth group that I was presiding over heard much of this. In fact, that was the most important step in the process, because it took y'all's reflections, my own reflections from the text, and it kind of put it in my own brain, right? And I was able to own them a little bit when I preached them for a year to these lovely young people. And so, so if the new youth guy wants to use it, like, hey, 20 copies purchased, 40 copies, I'll take it. But no, I don't. Was the question? How do I hope it gets used? I mean, yeah, if you have a desire to grow in your understanding of Genesis and read a book that's, written for exactly that purpose, I think you could, theoretically, every Christian, regardless of their theological persuasion, or Baptist or Presbyterian or Arminian or Calvinist or whatever, wants to know the Bible. I think so often they pick it up and they're a little bit lost. And so they immediately run to pithy application or a sort of like character reflection, and that's okay. There's better that than nothing. But I really think we can do a little bit better, and we can understand what's going on, and then we'll be more focused in our applications. So I think any Christian could pick this up, and if they're not offended by the cultural references, profit. And if they are, I genuinely do apologize.
A lot of this is the fruit of Bible talk. Yeah. But you have an MDiv. You study with Jim. So what is like? How did that prepare you for the book, or what's the relationship between that part of your life and then doing work with Bible talk, resulting in this?
I think it had to have prepared me, but I don't know how. Other than what a seminary education does is it gives you the fence posts, the parameters of orthodoxy, at least, right, with systematic theology, and then it gives you, if you're paying attention at least, the right instincts on how to read the Bible and all the rest. So, but I mean, if we're being honest, I've learned 10 times more doing Bible talk than I did in my MDiv.
Well, we've spent 10 times more time.
Yeah.
Time in the Bible.
Yeah. So like
Bible talk than
like the kind of instincts that I've procured through just the slow reading and conversing with you brothers, and then added to my own personal reflection and then teaching. I mean, that's just that was huge.
When you wrote papers in seminary, did they sound like this?
Yeah, I got a few bad grades early on, and I realized I am no longer in the creative writing program of a large secular university, which is where I got my degree, and so I toned it down and had much less fun writing papers. But yeah.